Hello and welcome back. Today I want to cover Roth IRAs. So, what is a Roth IRA? How does it work? How would you get one if you wanted one? And who might these accounts be good for? So, today we're going to cover everything you would possibly want to know about Roth IRAs in order to get started using one. So, let's get right into the material. So, what is a Roth IRA? And a Roth IRA is an individual retirement account. IRA is an acronym, and that offers tax free investment growth. So the designation Roth is meant to refer to the type of tax treatment that the account provides, and an IRA is the account type. Okay, so how does a Roth IRA work, and what does tax-free treatment mean? So any monies that go into a Roth IRA have to be contributed on what is known as an after-tax basis. After-tax just simply means that the taxes have already come out of the money before the contribution is made. So you can see kind of by the pictorial we have above, the normal flow of things, right, is that you would earn the money and then taxes would be paid out, right? This happens before your paycheck ever comes. The government takes a percentage of your paycheck and uses it for government revenue, right? You pay federal income tax, state income tax, Social Security, Medicare, things like that. That stuff comes out right after you earn that money. And then whatever's left over goes to your paycheck. And then from your paycheck, right, you have to pay your monthly bills and expenses. And then whatever's left over after that is what's known as free cash flow. And you can choose to contribute to your Roth IRA account from your free cash flow, which is your after tax income after all of your expenses have been paid. So I do want to show you an example of the type of power that a Roth IRA can have over time if you decide to use one for a number of years. And so I wanted to paint this pretend scenario that is absolutely realistic, right? So this is about as realistic as it gets. Account size starting at $0, an 8% annualized return, which is very normal for an S&P 500 equity related index, which is a very common investment. No return variance, which we'll talk about that in a little while. Contributions are made every month without fail, and those contributions are compounded on an annual basis from year to year to year. So 8% at the beginning, at the end of the first year, and then at the end of the second year, take the current balance, another 8%, go another year, end of year three, compound by again at 8%. Okay, so here's our pretend example of the type of returns that you could get from a Roth IRA by investing in a Roth IRA over time. So here I have two charts. So let's look at the chart on the right first. So the chart on the right shows the value of the Roth IRA account over time, assuming that you make contributions of a certain size without fail for the given period. So you can see kind of on my cursor, you can see we have markers at 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years. So you can see the green line represents a contribution of $500 a month. The blue line represents contributions of $200 a month, and then the purple line represents contributions of $100 a month. So you can see that after about 30 years, at only contributing about $100 a month, your ending account balance is somewhere around $125,000. You can see that for the most extreme case that we have listed here, the green line, if you contribute $500 a month for 30 years, then your total account balance will be almost $700,000. So let's look at the picture on the left. So the picture on the left is what I call pure gains. So basically it takes the value of the account, which is seen on the right side and is denoted by the circular shapes. It's the value of the circular shapes for that particular color minus your contributions up until that point. So these lines from the graph represent on the left in purple, blue, and green represent your total gains. So this is the amount of money in your account that did not come from you. This is money that just came off of the compounding of your original contributions and the returns of those contributions over time. So you can see that in the $500 a month case, you have $500,000 worth of gains after 30 years. In the blue case, where you contribute $200 a month for 30 years, your total account balance is 200,000. Your total gains, apologies, is $200,000. You can see that in the $100 a month case, you have $100,000 extra in the account that you did not contribute, that is purely gains to you. And to make it even better, that $100,000, $200,000, $500,000 is tax-free, meaning that you can pull that money out provided you follow some rules that we'll talk about a little bit later. But in theory, all of that money that's in that account belongs to you. And so if you meet the requirements, you don't have to pay taxes on that 100,000, 200,000, 500,000. All that money belongs to you. So that's a great tax advantage for individual people who are looking to build wealth over the long term. So in the next slide, I want to talk about Roth IRA contributions. So if you were interested in getting a Roth IRA and you were interested in how you would contribute to one, we'll talk about that on the next slide. Okay, Roth IRA contributions. So I've separated the Roth IRA contribution steps into really 3 phases. And so you should do the phases in order 1, 2, 3. So if you think you're interested in getting a Roth IRA and you're interested in making a contribution to one because you think that the investment returns that you saw on the previous page looked very appealing, then here's how you would go about that. First and foremost, you need to find an IRA provider. As I said in the first slide, an IRA is a special tax vehicle, and so you have to go to a particular place, a particular financial institution that provides Roth IRAs as an investment service. So some common places where you can get Roth IRA investment services are, number 1 is banks. Typically, banks offer Roth IRAs or IRAs in general. Typically the large banks are almost guaranteed to have them, right? The JP Morgan Chases, the Bank of America, the Wells Fargos of the world. But some of your local banks may have them too, some of your local credit unions. It's worthwhile asking the financial institution that you bank at whether or not they offer Roth IRA services if you're considering opening up a Roth IRA. The second most common place where you could probably find a Roth IRA is these asset management companies. Or online brokerages. So that would be like Fidelity, Charles Schwab, Vanguard. They're probably the biggest 3 players in the financial management investment firm space. I think I have a Roth IRA with Charles Schwab, but I know that the other 2, Fidelity, Vanguard, are also very good for Roth IRAs, and they provide a lot of other auxiliary services that would likely be very useful for a new investor or even a more seasoned investor. Okay, number 2. So number 2 is you'd have to check your eligibility. Even if you're able to open up a Roth IRA, you still have to meet certain rules in order to be able to contribute to one. The 2 rules are taxable income. So number 1 is you have to have taxable income in the year that you make the contribution. So most common forms of taxable income would be like if you're a salaried employee, or if you work for wages or commissions, or maybe you have a business of your own. You have to have earned income in the year that you contribute. That's one of the requirements. Most people will meet that criteria. Once you have established that you do have earned income in the year that you want to contribute, you have to look at the income limits. So your income has to be below a certain threshold in order to be able to contribute to a Roth. For whatever reason, the government is afraid to give people who make above a certain amount of money these types of tax benefits, although I'm not entirely sure why. It's very clear that people with higher incomes can get greater tax breaks from contributing to a traditional IRA versus a Roth because the tax deduction is going to be bigger. So that would almost be the opposite of the case that is actually a reflection of the law. But it is worthwhile that there was this one billionaire, and I'll probably link something in the description about him just because it's somewhat of an interesting story. But he was one of the co-founders of PayPal, I believe, and he had like $2,000 of PayPal stock when he became a founder. So he had $2,000 in his Roth IRA in PayPal stock. And now that PayPal stock is worth like $5 billion. And so there was a lot of uproar in Congress over the last couple of years, saying that that was a form of abuse for the account because he was able to grow $2,000 into $5 billion and never pay taxes on that money. But he followed all the Roth IRA rules, so it's a completely legal thing to do. And they try to make provisions to stop people from doing something like that. But obviously, like that's like a super rare case and almost never happens. But it does go to show that whatever's in that account belongs to you, and can anybody say anything about it and they can't tax you on it because you already pay taxes on the money when you put the money in. So that's just a special story that can kind of show the potential power of how you can build wealth with the Roth IRA. But as far as the income limits are concerned, so for a single family head of household, the MAGI is 138,000. So you have to make less than 138,000 if you're single family or head of household. If you're married filed jointly MFJ, then you have to make less than 228,000. So your MAGI is your modified adjusted gross income. That's usually what I call it, MAGI. But I'll have a completely separate video on MAGI and how MAGI works and how you can calculate MAGI. After you've found an IRA provider and after you've made sure that you've met all of the eligibility requirements, all that's left for you to do is to open up the account and contribute to it. So Roth IRA has another special rule that limits the amount of contributions that you can make to the account in a given year. So typically, like with a normal bank account, you can put as much money in it as you want at any given time, and you can take money out whenever you want. Roth IRA is a special account with special tax treatment, so it has special rules for contribution and withdrawal. The maximum amount that you can put in a Roth IRA in any given year for the tax year 2023, as I'm recording this, is $6,500 for those under age 50. If you're over age 50, you can make what is also known as a catch-up contribution in addition to the normal contribution limit. So for those over the age of 50, your contribution limit would be the normal contribution limit of $6,500 plus a catch-up contribution bonus of $1,500 for a total of $8,000. This income limit or this contribution limit for Roth IRAs is shared between IRAs. So if you have multiple Roth IRAs, the combined contribution on any given tax year cannot be more than $6,500 if you're under age 50 and $8,000 if you're age 50 or above. And rollovers do not count as contributions. And we'll talk more about rollovers on the next slide. So this is contributions. So next we're going to talk about withdrawals. So here's withdrawals. So this might look a little bit complicated, but I swear it'll make more sense as I explain it. So the best way to explain how to take withdrawals out of a Roth IRA are first to explain how money gets into the Roth IRA. So money can get into a Roth IRA one of three ways. One is a direct contribution, right? So you go to your account, you log in, and then you link your banking information just like you would like if you were doing a transfer from one bank to another. It's basically the same process. And you'd make a contribution into the account up to that $6,500 income limit. This is considered a direct contribution. The second way is what's known as a conversion. So a conversion is when you take funds that already exist in another traditional retirement account such as a 401k or a traditional 401k or a traditional IRA, and you do what's called a conversion. So you move those pre-tax funds to after-tax funds. In the process of doing that, you pay taxes on the funds that you move, and that process of moving money from that one account to the other account is known as a conversion or rollover. Those words are kind of used interchangeably. This is considered a second distinct way that money can move into a Roth IRA. So way number one is direct contribution. Way number two is a rollover or conversion. Way number three is the magical way, right? You already put money in the account via methods 1 and 2, right? So you made a direct contribution. Let's say you bought some stock and that stock has risen in value as you've owned the account. So this would be the third way to get new money into a Roth IRA. These are called your returns, your earnings, your gains. And this is designated by way number 3. So why do we make a distinction between all these different ways that money can kind of get into an account? And the reason why is because the IRS makes such a distinction, and we care about what the IRS cares about. Why does this matter? The IRS makes this designation because depending on how the money got into the account, depends on how you get it out. And there are different rules for how you get the money out based on how it got in. So if, for example, you make a contribution to a Roth IRA, you make a direct contribution. So you go in, you log into your account, you do a normal bank transfer, the money's in the account, up to $6,500, right? Because that's the direct contribution limit is $6,500. Rollovers and conversions do not count towards that $6,500. If you make a direct contribution to a Roth IRA, you can take that money out at any moment for any reason. You don't need permission. The only thing you have to do is do a withdrawal. So you log into your account, you say, I want to make a withdrawal of this amount of money, and that's it, which is very different from how a lot of the other retirement accounts work. Typically with those accounts, you have to wait until age 59 and a half, or there have to be some other special circumstances that allow you to take the money out. Now with the Roth IRA, you can take money out of a Roth IRA at any moment for any reason if you put the money in as a direct contribution. So let's say, for example, you have a Roth IRA and in 1 year you put in $1,000. The next year you put in, let's say, $2,000. Year 3, cash is a little bit tight. You need to take money out. You're looking for places where you can pull money from. You can pull up to $3,000 out of your Roth because that was your total contribution over the previous years. $1,000 2 years ago, $2,000 last year. And that's true whenever. So that's true a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. You can pull that contribution money out. So that's a really good and free way to be able to access liquid funds. The second way that you can pull money out of a Roth IRA is based on bullet number 2, the one in light blue, and that is based on the rollover conversion. So if money gets into a Roth IRA based on a rollover or a conversion, then you can pull the money out in 5 years after the conversion. I believe it's 5 tax years and not 5 calendar years, right? A tax year is just like tax years start in April and calendar years start in January. So there's a little bit of interesting intrigue going on there. But in general, it's 5 years. So the requirements for taking money out that was put in the account due to a conversion or a rollover is that the account has to be at least 5 years old. So you can open up a Roth IRA years prior to a conversion actually taking place, and you can get this 5-year requirement. Like let's say, for example, you open up a Roth IRA in 2020 and you want to do a conversion in 2025 where you don't have to worry about the 5-year requirement of the account being open for 5 years because the account's already been open for 5 years. But the reason why that rule exists is because sometimes people will open up a Roth IRA to do a conversion. And so the account is like brand new. And so they have to wait 5 years to do something with the money. But conversions and rollovers, 2 conditions that have to be met to take money out. One is that the account has to be open for at least 5 years. And 2 is that the funds have to be in the account for 5 years, right? Right. If the account is brand new, then both conditions will happen at the same time. But if the account was opened much earlier, then you just have to worry about waiting 5 years to take the money out. Now, consider here for this second point that I make no mention of age. That's right. You do not have to wait until 59 and a half to pull a conversion out of a Roth IRA. So let's say, for example, you have a 401k, you want to pull money out, you can't because you have to wait till 59 and a half to do that. So you do a conversion to move your traditional 401k money into a Roth IRA. All you have to do is wait 5 years after you do that and you can pull the money out. Now, let's say you were at 40 years old when you did the traditional 401k conversion. You're not 59 and a half, so you can't access the money directly from a traditional 401k. But you do a conversion to a Roth IRA, you pay the taxes, you wait 5 years. Now, at age 45, you can access that full amount that was in your conversion that is now in your Roth IRA tax-free, and you're only 45. So using conversions can be a great way to access funds that you otherwise would not have access to until a later age. And you can plan out conversions such that you have a steady stream of income pre the standard retirement age of 59 and a half when you can start to access the money normally through a 401k. This process is known as a Roth conversion ladder. And I'm going to make a separate video about the Roth conversion ladder and how it works and how you can use it to set up like early retirement and things like that, or even just a more substantiated retirement on a normal timeline. But yeah, so the second provision also allows you to take out money before 59 and a half, provided that the account has been open for at least 5 years and that the conversion and that 5 years has taken place since the conversion has taken place. So that's a good way to get even more money out of the account, right? With the first point, you could only take out up to your contribution limit. So up to $6,500 you could put in the account per year, and you could take all of it out at any time up to your contribution total over the years you've had the account. With number two, you could potentially put in much, much more into a 401k or a traditional IRA, convert it over to a Roth, pay those taxes, and then potentially take out those thousands or tens of thousands of dollars tax-free before you hit the standard retirement age of 59 and a half. Okay. And then lastly, money type number three. So returns and gains and earnings on invested monies. That pool of money, you have to wait until 59 and a half to touch. The other two pools you can pull out either immediately for no reason or within 5 years, but earnings have to stay in the account until 59 and a half. That is the true retirement count of how the retirement part of how this particular retirement account works. Is the only part of your monies that are in the account that are actually subjected to the normal traditional retirement account withdrawal rules are your returns. Everything else can be pulled out potentially at some point earlier than that, but your returns have to stay in the account until 59 and a half. So let's say, for example, you have an account, you have monies in it, and you have, let's say, a mix of different funds. If you want to pull money out of the account, it gets pulled out in this order. So if you have a mix of number one, number two, and number three in the account, right? You got a conversion in there, you got some earnings in there because the account is a few years old, and you obviously have contributions in there if you have earnings. So if you were to make a withdrawal from the account, your number ones would come out first, right? Your contributions would exit the account first. That's how the IRS designates it. That's how it is. That's how it's treated. Then after all of your contributions are gone, then you'll dig into the conversions as you start to pull out more. Then after all your conversions are gone, you'll start to dig into the earnings. So not only is each of these different ways show you under what circumstances you can pull the money out, but it also tells you in what order the money will be pulled out when you make a withdrawal. And so if you have, let's say, for example, $10,000 in a Roth IRA, and let's say 5,000 of that is direct contributions. And let's say 5,000 of that is investment gains. You did a good job. Congrats. You turned $5,000 into 10 grand. You can pull that $5,000 out at any moment for any reason because it falls under group number one. But the remaining $5,000, you have to wait until age 59 and a half to pull it out because it's investment earnings. So let's say, for example, second example, let's say you have $10,000 in the account again. Now you've only put in $2,000 into the account this time, and then you have $8,000 earnings, still 10 grand, and you pull out 5 grand. What happens now? So first, $2,000 come out of your contributions, but all that's left is your $8,000 in earnings. The money you pull out will be an additional $3,000 in addition to the $2,000 of contributions you pulled out. You'll pull out $3,000 in earnings to pull out 5 grand, and that will be a violation of your Roth IRA. So what typically will happen in that case is you will end up paying a penalty of 10% of what you pull out. And I remember there was some provision, maybe you end up paying taxes on it too, something dumb. I can't remember. But you certainly will pay the 10% penalty on whatever you pull out. So that'd be like an extra $300 fee or something because you pulled out earnings before 59 and a half. So just kind of keep that in mind that as you have different types of monies in the account, consider when each of those monies can be pulled out and under what circumstances to help you set up your long-term financial plan. So given all of the interesting ways that you can get money into and out of a Roth IRA and all the special rules, I thought that it'd be great to make it even more complicated. So these rules, these 3 ways of getting money out of the Roth IRA, to me are what are known as the standard methods for getting money out. But they're not the only ways. There's actually other special provisions that can be met that allow you to also pull money out of a Roth IRA in special circumstances. Most of the time, you're going to be using one of these 3 to pull money out, but I do want to at least make you aware that there are other potential ways that you can pull money out of a Roth IRA if you find yourself in an interesting situation. So we're going to discuss that on the next slide. Okay, here we are on the next slide. So we talk about the special withdrawal conditions. So The IRS on their website has probably about 12 or 15 different special exceptions that can be met that will allow you to pull money out of a Roth IRA outside of the 3 normal cases that I spoke about on the previous page. Those special exceptions have a large range of possibilities, from death of the person who owned the account. I have mobility there. Military instances. So if you're active military, maybe you're getting deployed, you have some form of disability or illness, or maybe even special life circumstances, like you're trying to purchase your first home, or maybe you're trying to pay for an education for either you or your child or your grandchild. And then, of course, the special exceptions that I list there at the bottom. SEPP, which is the substantially equal periodic payments. That is a special provision that allows you to take money out of a Roth IRA. And I'm going to cover that in a different video, but I just kind of wanted to list it here for completeness. And so over there on the right-hand side of the table, I list some very common vanilla ways that you can get money out of a Roth IRA outside of the 3 provisions that I listed on the previous page that are the most common special condition withdrawal scenarios that are used. So the 2 I have listed there are education expenses, which I mentioned briefly earlier. So if you're trying to pay for tuition, fees, books, and supplies for either you, a grandchild, or a child, you can make withdrawals from a Roth IRA. I believe I'm not sure what the limit is. You'd have to check on that, but you can use your Roth IRA money to pay for educational expenses like room and board. The second provision I have listed there is particularly for first-time home buyers. So if you are trying to buy your first house and maybe you made some contributions to a Roth IRA in previous years, not only can you take out all of your contributions based on provision 1 from the previous page, right? You can take out your contributions at any time for any reason, and you don't need to ask anybody. There's no age requirement. But in addition to being able to take out your contributions for that, you can also take out an additional $10,000 on top of that, presumably of either your conversions or your earnings, to pay for a first-time home. Now, this provision supersedes the rule that you have to pay a 10% penalty if you pull money out. If you pull earnings out of a 401k before 59.5, this supersedes that. So if you pull the money out for a home purchase, then you don't have to pay that penalty. And it's not necessarily just a home purchase either. If you're buying a home, or if you're even constructing a home, all of that kind of qualifies under this provision, interestingly. The other thing I'll say is that it's not necessarily for first-time home buyers. It is for first-time home buyers. They meet the requirement. But if you haven't been a homeowner in the last 2 years, then you technically qualify as a first-time home buyer under this provision, and you can still pull the money out for that reason as well. So I know that was a lot, but those are all the ways that you can pull money out of a Roth IRA for different circumstances. So you'll have the 3 common cases that I listed on the previous slide, but then you'll also have all of these special provisions that you want to look into. And so I will put a link in the description to the IRS page that shows you all of the special withdrawal conditions, just in case you may be wanting to investigate what the potential withdrawal conditions are, because maybe you find yourself in a particular set of circumstances. But it's good to know what all these special provisions are, just in case you potentially find yourself in that situation, or you potentially find yourself in that situation now. Okay, so we've talked about what an IRA is. We talked about how it works. We've talked about the type of money you can make by using one. We've talked about the ways that the requirements to contribute to a Roth IRA. And we've talked about the ways that you can get money out of a Roth IRA. And so now I want to take this into a financial planning lesson. And I want to talk about the strengths of a Roth IRA, and then its weaknesses. And then after we talk about the strengths and the weaknesses, I want to talk about who this account may be best for in terms of financial planning. So let's get into the strengths. Next, we're going to talk about the strengths of a Roth IRA. So a strength is just something that differentiates this account from other comparable accounts that will allow you to optimize some condition in your portfolio that you care about. So maybe it means that you're able to get higher after-tax returns than you otherwise would be. Maybe it means that you're able to provide more flexibility in terms of liquidity and timeline than you otherwise would be able to. Or maybe you prefer customization, right? So that's a form of flexibility, right? So that you have options to kind of mix and match in ways that allow you to take into account possible changing circumstances down the line where you may have to shift direction. And you will be able to easily do that because you considered that when you made the plan in the first place. So those are the types of things that you can get from taking advantage of strengths of any account. All accounts have strengths and weaknesses. It's important to know what the different strengths and weaknesses are so you can best craft a scenario that is efficient for your particular financial situation. So let's get into the strengths of Roth IRAs. So the first strength I have here is tax advantages. So we spent a little bit of a while talking about tax advantages. And so I'll just briefly gloss over it again here, is that monies that are in a Roth IRA have special tax treatment. You contribute to the account with after-tax funds. Once the money is in the account, you don't have to ever pay taxes on that money ever again. So if that money grows from $100 to $100,000, all that money is yours. The government can't tax it under current tax law. What it also means is that once you had $100,000 in there, you can choose how you invest that money. So you can invest it in stocks, you can invest it in bonds, you can invest in real estate, and we'll talk about that and how that works in a different video. But what you'll come to appreciate about the Roth IRA is that sometimes certain investments that are good investments will produce income for you. And if you hold those assets outside of a tax advantaged accounts such as a Roth IRA, then you will have to pay income taxes on the income produced by those assets. But if the assets are in a Roth IRA, you don't have to pay income on them. You still receive that income. Well, let me qualify that. That income is still monies to you that will appear in the Roth IRA, but it's not taxable income to you. So you still get the gains. And you still get the income. It's just not taxable income to you. And you can't spend it because you don't have it. But it's in the account for future use when you meet the qualifications to pull it out. Otherwise, you'd have to pay taxes on the money as you earn it, which is going to eat into your investment returns. So a Roth IRA can prevent that. Also, tax uncertainty. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, is that any of the money that's in the account is yours to keep. That's very different from the way it works in a traditional IRA. In a traditional IRA, you can almost think of it as you're investing your money next to the government's. And you don't really know when, for the funds that you have in a traditional IRA, you don't really know how much you're going to have to pay in taxes when you pull that money out. Number one, you don't know what tax bracket you're going to be in. Number two, you don't know what tax rates are going to be when you pull the money out. A lot can change in 10, 20, 30 years. Tax law can change. And so you have to plan, you have to take that uncertainty into account into your plan. With a Roth IRA, you don't have to take any of that into account. It's already been taken into account because the money can't be taxed again under current tax law. So that creates certainty in your financial plan, and it allows you to kind of move forward with a certain amount of confidence that your plan is going to meet all of your needs in the future. Okay, so let's go into the second strength. The second strength is investment choice. So depending on who you get your Roth IRA with, so if you go to one of the bigger investment firms that I listed earlier, right, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, you can, and the banks too, the banks have access to brokerage services as well. Brokerage services just means that they broker the trades. So that means that you can put monies into the account and then you can use those monies in the account to buy and sell stock and bonds and other assets that are traded on the public exchanges. Compared to a traditional 401k that may have just a handful of different mutual funds or ETFs that you can invest in. They probably have like an equity ETF, a bond ETF, maybe some target date funds, maybe an international ETF. Maybe it's typically for a typical 401k is typically 4 to 6, maybe 8 different options you can invest in, a cash option, something like that. But with a Roth IRA, you have many, many, many thousands of different things you can invest in. And for any given 401k, you may have a handful of options. I could find those exact same options on the public exchanges, Roth IRA, right? Equivalent investments. So you really don't lose anything in terms of what you have access to, but you gain a whole lot by the different stuff that you have, by the different stuff that you now have access to. Plus, you can also open up special Roth IRAs that allow you to just not hold financial assets such as stocks, bonds, and real estate, but you can also own what's known as self-directed IRAs, which allow you to hold different types of assets such as gold and crypto and many of other things. And we'll have a separate video on that talking about that. It's also worth noting that if you choose to invest in an IRA period, those tend to have lower fees than 401ks because 401ks have more government oversight because they're more broadly used and everyone uses them. And so they'd have a lot of administrative fees. And interestingly, they charge you those administrative fees to manage that account, and that eats into your long-term returns. So it's certainly not, if you certainly had a choice, the IRAs are typically better, all else equal. So that would be the second advantage, is the breadth of investment choices that you can use, not only to protect your assets, but also to help you diversify in newer, more interesting ways into new and more interesting asset classes such as precious metals and crypto and all these things to kind of potentially help you get higher returns or to help you customize your portfolio more so for what it is you are trying to accomplish. So, all right, on the next slide, we have the third advantage, which is liquidity. So Roth IRAs have what I consider to be okay liquidity, right? So we talked about at least three common ways that you can get money out of a Roth IRA, and then 12 to 15 potential special ways that you can use to pull money out of a Roth IRA. But here's the thing, right? When I'm saying that the liquidity, let me back up. So the Roth IRA probably has the best liquidity options of all of the traditional retirement accounts. And when I say traditional, I'm talking about mostly all the 401ks types, all the IRA types. It typically has the best liquidity out of all of them, which is why I put it in the okay bucket. All the other retirement accounts typically have liquidity that is not as good, right? You can only access the money at 59 and a half unless you take a loan or something like that. But the IRA is not like that, right? The Roth IRA is not like that. You can take out your contributions at any reason. You can take out your conversions and rollovers after 5 years after putting it in, regardless of age. And you can take out your earnings, your investment returns after 59 and a half. That's a lot of different options that you can consider to help you kind of plan out your financial strategy. So it is possible that you could take money out of your Roth IRA first and last, depending on what your withdrawal order is from your accounts, or you can even get income from your IRA. And so you have a lot of different kind of options because of all the different withdrawal possibilities. So good liquidity options are always better. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to use them, right? Just because an account has liquidity doesn't mean you have to pull the money out. But the fact that you could pull the money out is always an advantage, and it's something you may need to take advantage of in the future. So, okay, so that is all of the strengths. So next we're going to go into the weaknesses of Roth IRAs. Okay, so now we're going to cover the weaknesses of Roth IRAs. So in general, right, a weakness of an account can create unnecessary losses in your portfolio, right? If you set it up incorrectly, or maybe you're put in a circumstance where you have to take money out because your financial circumstances weren't planned through well enough. So you may end up taking some tax slaps that you otherwise didn't have to take if you had a better planner. And also inefficiency, right? So you may end up losing gains to taxes, normal taxation on investments that you possibly could have avoided. Or you could have the exact same portfolio size and maybe you could have taken on lower risk in order to achieve the same outcome. So a weakness is just anything that kind of holds you back unnecessarily. And so we're going to talk about the Roth's weaknesses. So the first Roth weaknesses that I see is a low contribution limit. As I mentioned earlier, the total Roth contribution limit is $6,500 plus an extra $1,500, I believe, was the catch-up contribution for those 50 and older. If you compare that to the 401k, whose total contribution limit as of 2023 is $22,500, it's almost triple. It's almost triple the contribution limit. Now, that's probably fine for people who have access to 401ks and IRAs, but not everybody has access to a workplace 401k plan. You have to work for an employer that has a qualified 401k plan and you have to sign up for it. if you're not in that boat, then the Roth IRA and the traditional IRA are all you have. And the total amount you can contribute is $6,500 a year, which is not a lot. So for those people who don't have access to 401k plans, $6,500 to contribute for a full year for towards your retirement is not a lot. So, and on top of that, the total contribution limit doesn't really change with inflation. So, like for example, like over the last 5 years, I believe the contribution limit has only been updated twice for a total of like $1,000 or something like that. Even though we've went through a very high period of inflation over the last 3, 4, 5 years. So that means that the amount of money with respect to your earning power that you can put into an account as a contribution limit has decreased over time. So that's something that I really think that Congress should rectify and increase the Roth IRA contribution limits, specifically for people who don't have access to or contribute to 401k plans at work. So that is one thing that you will have to kind of consider as you make your financial plan and you start to contribute to different investment accounts, is that once you kind of really get the ball rolling, you will likely have to contribute to a Roth IRA if you have one. And if you choose to do that, you may have to also contribute to other accounts to kind of help you move the needle in a considerable way. So that would be disadvantage number one. So let's talk about disadvantage number two. Disadvantage number two is inflation sensitivity. So we talked about this one a little bit in the previous one. So the total amount that you can contribute to a Roth is $6,500. The total amount you can pull out is the sum of all the contributions you made over the lifetime of the account. That's a fixed number. So let's say, for example, you put in the maximum amount that you could. And let's say, for the sake of this example, that the maximum is $6,000 and has been $6,000 for a little bit. So let's say year one, you put in 6,000. Year two, you put in 6,000. Year three, you put in 6,000 more. So that's a total of 18,000. So let's say year four, you need to pull money out. How much can you pull out? Well, because they all went in as direct contribution, the most you can pull out is 18,000. You don't pay taxes on it. You don't have to ask nobody to pull the money out. Okay. What if instead of pulling out the money in year four, pulling out $18,000 in year four, you pulled it out in year 20? You would the same 18,000. You want to pull it out after 20 years instead of after 4. Well, you can still pull out that $18,000. You don't need to ask anybody. You don't need to sign any papers. You don't need to do anything. But consider that you have experienced, 20 years of inflation between when you put the money in and when you pull the money out. You can only pull out $18,000. But that $18,000 you pull out does not have the same buying power as the $18,000 you put in, right? And the longer you keep the money in the Roth IRA, the more considerable the difference is between the buying power of the money you put in and the buying power of the money you pull out. So even though the Roth IRA has some of the best liquidity options among the retirement plans, it also has a disadvantage because the longer you wait to pull the money out, if you choose to pull the money out, the less that money is worth. Yeah. So that's a considerable disadvantage in my view. But overall, I think the Roth IRA does a really good job and is a really balanced account. So now that we've talked about the pros and the cons, I do want to have a moment to talk about who I think what groups of people I think the Roth IRA would be best for. And so we'll go into that on the next slide with best uses. Okay, so here's a mini series I've started with some of the accounts that I've listed out so far. It's best uses. A lot of people sometimes know how these accounts work, but they don't know whether their circumstances necessarily meet the best way, and whether or not there could be other accounts that are maybe more optimal to use instead of the ones they're already using. They just kind of don't know what tools are kind of available to them. So best uses just means that for your particular situation, would this account maximize the return that you could conceivably get from using this account versus other accounts? These particular lists, when I do these for best uses, they're not ordered. They're just kind of off the cuff, and then we'll just kind of talk about them. So let's get into the best uses. So best use case number one. If you are in a position where you have low taxable income, so this can be accomplished one of two ways. You either have a low taxable income because you have a low income, a relatively low income, or option number two, you have a number of different income sources, and it just so happens that the ones that are taxable are not that much, right? So if you own real estate or something like that, you maybe get a lot of deductions, and so your taxable income might be lower, for example. So in the case where you have low taxable income, consider the Roth and how it works. Remember what I said in the earlier slide, almost at the very beginning at this point, that you earn the money, then the money's taxed, then the money becomes your after-tax paycheck, then the money goes into the Roth. If you're at a very low taxable income already, then you don't have that much money coming out of your base pay to pay taxes because you're in a low income bracket. So you're not paying that much taxes anyway. So always the disadvantage of the Roth is that you have to contribute with after-tax dollars, which means that the taxes have to come out first. But if you're in an income bracket where you don't really pay taxes anyway, then that doesn't really help you. Consider the opposite case where you have a traditional IRA. You contribute, you earn the money, then you put it in the account. You avoid a tax bracket, whatever tax bracket you're in. So consider somebody who's low income that contributes to a traditional IRA. That doesn't make any sense either, because what will typically happen is you'll put the money in, then come tax time, you'll get a write-off, a deduction for the amount you put in. And then they'll basically give you back the taxes that you paid on that money when you contributed to the account. Now, if you're in a low income bracket, you didn't pay any money on the money you put in the account. So that deduction is worthless to you because you didn't pay any taxes to begin with. So it doesn't make sense for somebody who's in a low income bracket who doesn't have a high amount of taxes that they pay on a given year to try to avoid paying taxes. The Roth IRA basically says, like, look, pay your taxes, which are zero or very close to zero. Invest this money tax free, and you only have up to go from here. So if you move into a higher bracket later, which is a possibility for someone who's in a low income bracket, you can only go up at that point. If you do move up in the future, now you pay real taxes. Now your situation's changed, but you already have the money in the Roth now. So if you want to pull the money out, you can pull it out tax free. You don't need to ask anybody to pull it out. And now you may want to consider contributing to other types of accounts because now you're taxable. Now you actually have taxable income. But when you don't have taxable income, the penalty of using the Roth goes away because you don't pay any taxes. So it's very likely that people that are low income can invest in a Roth IRA on a cheaper basis than the rest of us. So that would be my kind of conclusion for group number one. Low taxable income group have a lot to benefit because they don't pay taxes, which means that having to invest on an after-tax basis is not that big of a deal. Okay, so let's talk about best use group number two. No Roth 401k. So maybe you're in a particular situation where you like the Roth, you like contributing to the Roth, you like the idea that the government can't come snatch the money from you later on and you don't even know how much it's going to be and you don't like that uncertainty. So maybe you want to contribute to a Roth. Maybe you want your Roth contributions to dominate not only your after-tax contributions, but your retirement contributions, period. Sounds like a good deal to you. There's only one problem. Your employer doesn't offer a Roth 401k. So you don't have access to that higher limit Roth 401k contribution limit of $22,500. So you have to settle for the $6,500 annually limit plus the $1,500 catch up at best. But at the very least, you are able to contribute to your Roth IRA on an after-tax basis, and you are able to build up your after-tax portfolio, and that's better than not being able to do it at all. So if you had to choose between a Roth 401k and a Roth IRA, it's still not trivial which one you choose because, again, we're talking about fees, we're talking about investment choices, we're talking about different contribution limits, we're talking about different liquidity availability, right? So it's not necessarily an apples to apples comparison. But if the thing you cared about most was the fact that you could contribute on an after-tax basis and then you could, of course, roll it into a Roth IRA later on if you wanted to, there's nothing to stop you from doing that. If just getting more after-tax contributions, tax-free contributions into a Roth vehicle, then the 401k would be best. But if you don't have a 401k, then an IRA will do. You work with what you have and it'll work out. So that's all I have. Thank you. Appreciate it. For if you're still here sticking around, if you enjoy the content, if you think you're learning things, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know in the comments if you would have thought about any more best use cases or any other advantages or disadvantages that I didn't think of. And I'll see you in the next video.